On today's show, all signs point to Rick Tocchet being the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. What that means and a whole lot of playoff talk on today's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome inside this Wednesday, May 14th edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Senators alongside Gil Martin from Locked On New York Islanders. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day right here all across the podcast network where we have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week. I know I'm going to be tuned in to Locked On Flyers later today, where they will be no doubt discussing the report from Elliot Friedman and John Butchergross that Rick Tocchet will become the next head coach in formerly the Vancouver Canucks in Flyers history. And Gil, it's not the first time he will be wearing that Flyers logo.
No, that's where he started his NHL career, was drafted by the Flyers, played for them before moving on to several other teams. And so it's kind of coming full circle for Rick Tocchet, and he takes over a team that's been in rebuild mode for a few years now, but is kind of making a little bit of progress, I think, overall.
I think so, too. And if you're looking at a style to kind of move off of John Tortorella, but still want that hard-nosed brand of hockey, Rick Tocchet can certainly provide that. He is highly respected by all the players that have him. Just ask Quinn Hughes in his season-ending press conference. He spoke glowingly about his relationship with Tocchet, and it was Rick Tocchet's decision to leave Vancouver. Sure, they didn't extend the option on him, but they wanted to renegotiate a new contract, and he said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to take my talents elsewhere, and he knew that there was a big market available to him with plenty of openings across the National Hockey League, and he lands in what I think in layman's terms would be the best fit for his style of the way he wants to play the game. Now, is it going to gel with every player? Of course not, but the way the Flyers are trying to build that brand of hockey, I think it's going to be quite an interesting fit because, look, Gil, he had that very successful season in Vancouver where they finished first in the conference, 109 points, super regressed this year, though, finishing fifth and missing the playoffs. So where do you think Rick Tocchet can help this Flyers team the most?
I think he can install or maintain, because, Tortorella is a disciplined type coach, but I think he can maintain that, and I think he can add a little bit of juice to their offense and to their overall style. And the other question that comes into my mind, Ross, when you talk about what happened in Vancouver, how big are the internal problems in that locker room that Tocchet was so eager to not renegotiate or extend his contract?
Yeah, that is the big question. When you walk away from a generational talent like Quinn Hughes, you don't do that lightly. And there was a lot of talk about Elias Pettersson as the top line center. Maybe the work ethic aspect of it was a bit of a red flag for him, and they move off of JT Miller mid-season. It was such a fall from grace for a team that felt like it had a sustainable system intact to build off of last year's success and have an even better year this year. It wasn't the case, and now they're still looking for their next head coach. Now, if you look at what the Philadelphia Flyers are hoping that Rick Tocchet brings in, it is that sort of grit mentality. But if you look deeper at the results for Rick Tocchet with the Vancouver Canucks, they were getting outshot almost every night. The analytics weren't always pretty. So it's going to have to, I think, be a bit of an adjustment for Rick Tocchet as well to kind of nail the X's and O's, or at least nail the hires of his assistant coaches that can handle those kind of more details of the game.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see who he brings in. Will he take any of his former staff from Vancouver with him? Will he bring in new people? There's a lot we still don't know about how things are going to proceed in Philadelphia.
And it's going to be fascinating to watch. And our friends over at Locked On Flyers will have you covered each step of the way. That means there are still 5 openings available for head coaches in the National Hockey League. As I mentioned, the Vancouver Canucks, Tocchet's former team, Pittsburgh Penguins, Boston Bruins, Seattle Kraken, and the Chicago Blackhawks are all looking for their next bench boss. 3 have already been hired: Tocchet, Joel Quenneville to Anaheim, and Mike Sullivan with the New York Rangers. I expect these searches to continue moving fast. Everyone wants to have their whole management structure in place well before the draft so that everybody can be on the same page heading in to free agency. I'll ask you this, Gil. Out of all of those openings, which one do you think is the most attractive? If you're a head coach and you can pick which destination you go to, where would you choose?
Out of all of those teams, I might go Seattle, just because there is a lot of young talent on that team. Guys who are not yet in their prime, players that you could mold and help make their upswing, into their primes of their NHL careers. They have a number of players who were formerly, high draft picks. So I might go that route. I mean, I know Boston is kind of in a full rebuild right now. Pittsburgh is interesting too, because you have, aging superstars like Crosby and Letang and Malkin, but how much longer are they going to be there, and how much talent can you surround them with? And I think it was interesting, Ross, I wanted your take on this. Crosby saying he didn't want to be involved in the head coaching search in Pittsburgh. What do you make of that comment by Sidney Crosby?
It doesn't really surprise me, just based on the type of guy he is. He's going to control what he can control, and I think what's in his best interest to control. If he starts handpicking coaches and it doesn't work out, or whatever the case may be, I just think it's not in his needs. He's got enough to worry about trying to mold the players that they do have. You see him after the season working with the AHL players on the ice and doing what he can almost as a quasi coach who also can still play at an extremely elite level. But I think that that's probably the answer that you would want from your leadership group, that you then trust the process that Kyle Dubas and the management team in Pittsburgh has, and you have to just trust that they're going to pick the right guy.
Yeah, and I think, it's refreshing to see a superstar not get overly involved in something like the coaching hiring process.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't involved in any player movement talks either. Otherwise, I think Jake Gensel would probably still be a Pittsburgh Penguin. He was obviously pretty upset when that trade went down about a year and a half ago. So my choice is going to be the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, a rebuilding team. You have that supposed generational talent, Connor Bedard, who, in terms of kind of the narrative around Connor Bedard, it almost feels a little unfair at this point, where he didn't step into the league and have a McDavid or a Sidney Crosby type impact, but he still put up 67 points in 82 games as a 19-year-old. I think if I'm a head coach, I'm looking at that and saying, he is not even entering his prime, not even close to it, and He's already putting up that type of numbers. They've also got a lot of other pieces to work with. I think their rebuild is far enough along that if you're a head coach and you sign a 3-year contract there, you kind of have, I would say, a mulligan year right off the bat where you're not expected to compete, and you can have that year to implement your systems and help the younger players develop. But it's also far enough along that you could see the fruits of your labor at the end of the day. Some coaches that are hired, you think in Ottawa with DJ Smith, when he came in, it was almost as a midway mark, kind of like hey, we've torn this thing down. Now we need somebody to help develop the players, but you're probably not going to be here once we become a playoff team. I think that Chicago's in a place where in 2 to 3 years, they should be competing in that very tough Central Division. Let us know in the comments too. Who would your top choice be if you're a head coach? Would you be going to Chicago, Seattle, Boston, Pittsburgh, or Vancouver? For more on each of those coaching searches, you can check out all of our local podcasts. Just type in Locked On Team Name on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to all the everydayers making us your first listen each and every day, twice a day now on Locked On NHL, because we do have our game night show wrapping up all the events that happened, immediate reaction from our local hosts, and we'll get into a critical Game 5 tonight, the only series that is tied at 2, the Leafs and Panthers. Next, you're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Welcome back, Locked On NHL here on May 14th. We are 5 weeks in to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it has been quite a ride already. The first round saw a number of exciting games, and we're on our way to that in the second round. I think probably a step back in terms of the back and forth in some series, but we have had some unreal moments. You think of that 0.4 seconds left, Vegas winning the game in Edmonton. That series to me is probably been the best so far in this second round, and we'll get to previewing those games later in the show, including not only tonight between the Oilers and the Golden Knights, but tomorrow we could also have more elimination games. The Oilers can do it tonight. Tomorrow it's the Carolina Hurricanes and Dallas Stars, both looking to advance on the road in their respective matchup. So which team has the best chance of coming back from down to 3-1? We'll get to that later, but let's focus in here on Game 5 between the Leafs and Panthers. It's a home cooking series. Leafs go up 2-0 on home ice. They go down to Florida. They take a lead against the Panthers 3-1, and then it's Brad Marchand in overtime of Game 3. That leads into a Game 4 that was pure domination by the Florida Panthers. One thing I've learned, Gil, there's no momentum game to game, but there was certainly message sending at the end of Game 4. Max Domi's hit from behind on Alex Barkov. How do you think that affects the emotion going into tonight's game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will ramp things up, but I think the key is going to be discipline. You want to answer, but you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball by taking a bad penalty and resulting in your team being shorthanded. The other aspect of it in my mind is this. I think that if this series becomes overly physical, that favors the Florida Panthers. I think they want to play a more gritty style of hockey. And I don't know if that's something, the Leafs, they have to answer, but they don't necessarily want to be going back and forth, concentrating on the physical. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that would play into the Panthers' hands. That's the way they want to play, especially on the road. They want to be able to kind of bully you out of the building. And Matthew Tkachuk was certainly letting William Nylander know at the end of the game from bench to bench that that's what he expects to see in tonight's game. So it's going to be a get your popcorn ready type game, because you do not, if you're Florida, want to be having to come home down 3-2. And if you're the Leafs, you absolutely cannot go on the road down in this series. Not only that, but they just need to improve. They went scoreless for the second time this Stanley Cup playoffs in that shutout loss on Sunday night. 2-0 was the score, and the shots were 37-23. Really, Joseph Woll was the only guy who came and showed up in Game 4 for the Toronto Maple Leafs and was able to make a huge impact. Really, you heard it from a lot of Leaf fans after the game. They were saying, man, that was the type of effort from Woll where you can steal a game you have no business winning. All they needed was that game-tying goal, and it was only 1-0 all the way up until 8 minutes left in the third period when Sam Bennett of all people, I'm sure that made Leaf fans even more upset that it's Sam Bennett that extended that lead. But easy key to victory tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's not take 4 penalties in the first period, because this Panthers power play is deadly. And not only that, just from a strategy standpoint, Gil, like, you don't get your legs under you if you're Matthews or Nylander. I know Marner's on the penalty kill. Matthews is a little bit as well, but you're not in a rhythm at 5-on-5, and it could really affect these pure offensive players and what they do best. So I think the less penalties, and it's kind of ironic to say because we know the Leafs overall this postseason have had a good power play, but I think the more they play at 5-on-5 tonight, it's probably going to work out in their favor.
I think so too. And, obviously, the Leafs would love to be able to unleash their power play, but they don't want to be shorthanded. They can't afford to be shorthanded. And I'm telling you, this, out of all the 4 series right now, this has been the most evenly matched in my mind. And the contrasting styles just make it fascinating to watch.
I think we're going to see a better effort from the Leafs, not only because, of course, you have to bounce back at home after the effort they put on Sunday, but it seems like there's been a bit of a flu bug going around the Leafs room. There's a couple of guys that missed practice the other day, but they've got now an extra day off between the games. It was Sunday, then 2 days off. Now they'll play on Wednesday night. And in particular, I'm looking at Auston Matthews, who has 0 goals in 9 career games past the first round. That has to change if the Leafs are going to have success. And I understand Leaf fans that are pointing that, hey, he's been a very good defensive player. We also think he might be dealing with a bit of an issue that might be causing his shot to be affected. He leads the Stanley Cup playoffs in missed shots, and he got so close a few times. You think back to the Ottawa series in Game 4, they had the 4-minute power play in overtime with the opportunity to sweep, and he hit the post. He's hit a number of posts this postseason, so we'll see how Auston Matthews can respond tonight. The Leafs' best players are going to have to earn their money tonight if the Leafs are going to be successful, in my opinion. If you're a Panthers fan, not only are you ecstatic that they were able to dominate the way they did in Game 4, but we also know that Sergei Bobrovsky is the type of goalie, when he gets on a heater, he can be almost impossible to beat, and he looks like he's getting in that zone like he is now.
He does, and, it's amazing how he has, in the past, stepped up in clutch situations. We saw him, win the Stanley Cup last year, go on a run to the Cup final the year before. If you're the Maple Leafs, scoring early in this game, getting that first goal to maybe take Bobrovsky's confidence down half a notch would be a huge, impactful thing for Toronto.
And you also got to wonder how it's catching up on the Leafs that they have been the team that's taken the most abuse this offseason. And what do I mean by abuse? Well, they've been hit the most of any team this postseason, and they also have the most block shots, 215. The Capitals are at 212. The Stars are at 202. Those are the top 3. So we'll see how the Leafs respond tonight. It's going to be an awesome one to watch and to get teed up on it. Locked On Maple Leafs, Locked On Panthers, and for all the post-game reaction, go check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Last night, come on, the Winnipeg Jets dominated on the road. I'll go so far as saying dominated. There were long stretches of that game where they controlled the play. They had 2 glorious chances right before the Stars scored at the other end. Do they have a chance of coming back, though? They've been great at home. That conversation's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen each and every Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders got you covered on all things NHL draft after the Islanders shocked the world and jumped up into that number 1 spot. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Senators. We're doing our season in reviews and some off-season projections as we inch ever so close to the real transactional period of the season right before, during, and after the NHL draft that's coming up June 27th from Los Angeles. Only one team is going to be thrilled walking into that draft, and it's the team that hoists the cup. 3 teams have their opponents on the brink of elimination with the chance to make the Final Four. The Dallas Stars, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Edmonton Oilers. Now to flip it, the Jets, Capitals, and Golden Knights are all on the brink of elimination. They're all also going home. Who do you think has the best chance to extend the series?
Boy, that is a tough one, but I am going to go with the Winnipeg Jets as the team with the best chance to extend the series, mostly because they are a very different team on home ice in the playoffs this year than they have been on the road. And I think a lot of that surrounds Connor Hellebuck. He has played very well in Winnipeg, and yet he has struggled away from home. And believe it or not, the Jets have not won a road game yet in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year.
This year, that was their 9th straight road loss in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It dates back to Game 1 of 2023. They went into Vegas and bullied them, beat them out of the building. They lost Game 2 in Vegas. They lost Game 5 in Vegas. Then the next year, they lost Game 3 and 4 in Colorado. Then this year, lost all 3 games in St. Louis, and then lost both Game 3 and 4 in Dallas. So 4 different buildings, 9 straight road losses for the Winnipeg Jets. But I understand what Scott Arniel was saying after the game. Jets head coach said, I loved our game. And I did too. I felt like they carried the play for a lot of it, but there's been one trend that stands out in this series. There has been an early power play, if not more than one power play, in every single game. And the team that's gotten that power play has scored on it. And that team has also won the game. You think back to the double minor the Jets got early in Game 2. In Game 3, it was an early power play. Last night, it was an early power play. 2 of them, they kill off the first one. Second one kills them. And then in the third period, it was a double minor for Hayden Fleury that cost them this one. And I think if you're the Winnipeg Jets, the most frustrating part, I teased it going into the segment, but Gil, Kyle Connor on a shorthanded breakaway moments before Granlund's one-timer that got him the hat trick, he finishes that play 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, this was the 10th time, right? I mean, yeah, no doubt about that. As far as Hellebuck is concerned, do you think this is mostly psychological, his inconsistent play on the road in the playoffs at this point?
I think yes and no. I think maybe more so in the St. Louis series. Now, the stats weren't great for Hellebuck last night, and the first one you'd probably want to have back, just a 1-on-3 rush on the power play, just a break-in, but it was a great shot. That said, you want your Vezina winning goalie, 3 times soon to be Vezina winning goalie, to make an easy save there. But the worst goal of the game was the only one that got past Jake Ottinger. It was just a little shot from the half wall from Nikolai Ehlers, and it got past him. So I look at this as probably, and it's tough to say that when the guy had an .875 save percentage last night, but that was his best road game of these Stanley Cup playoffs, and it still wasn't close to enough. I think we also have to give a lot of credit to the Dallas Stars, and I think if we're going to do that, a way we can contrast with the Winnipeg Jets, who, by the way, have $6 million in cap space right now. And they have the richest owner in the National Hockey League. The richest man in Canada, David Thompson, owns the Winnipeg Jets. Money is not the issue here, like you would say sometimes in a small market where it's like, oh, they did what they could. No, the Jets are a team that has and can spend to the cap. They chose to go the depth route, adding Luke Schenn and Brandon Tanev at the trade deadline. What did the Dallas Stars do? They got Mikko Rantanen, who has a hat trick in this series, and Mikael Granlund, who has a hat trick in this series. There's the difference for me, is that one team recognized the opportunity and went out and paid a steep price to get elite talent. And the other team said, hey, we're the President's Trophy winners likely at that point. We're going to be okay.
Yeah, and the players who the Stars brought in have had, as you said, quite an impact. And look, Rantanen, obviously such an elite talent.
Elite.
He was the hot potato this year, right? He was on 3 different teams, finally seems to have found a home in Dallas, and he's going to be there for the long haul. So the Stars have got to be happy about that.
And imagine the storyline if somehow we get a Stars Hurricanes final. If he already beat his one former team in the first round and then has an opportunity in the finals to beat his other, that would be quite the moment. Mikko Rantanen leads the Stanley Cup playoffs in points with 19 in 11 games. Just unreal. He's shooting 28% right now, 9 goals on 32 shots. I think the Jets get it done as well in Game 5. I think the crowd's going to play a big role in that, and they just need Hellebuyck to be good. But Jake Ottinger was great last night. He really was. He made 10 bell saves even before the second goal for the Dallas Stars. Kyle Connor had a glorious chance side door and again was robbed by Jake Ottinger. So the Dallas Stars are up 3-1 in their series. I also think the Washington Capitals can extend that series. The Hurricanes just play such a suffering type of hockey. It's really impressive the way they've bought into Rod Brindamore's system. They play the game just like he did. Really, really strong defensive hockey, and it helps they're getting elite goaltending. I think the Vegas Golden Knights are the team that's most in trouble. I think the Edmonton Oilers are finding their groove, and if you look at it, they're doing it without elite production from Draisaitl and McDavid. Sure, they connected for the overtime winner in Game 3, but I'm looking at this as a situation where when you have Evander Kane playing the way he is, Corey Perry contributing offensively, like they're going to be a dangerous team as long as they can get decent goaltending, like they got a shutout in Game 4, then I think they're going to be able to take this series pretty handily, maybe even in 5.
Yeah, I think it's the writing seems to be on the wall. And, the Oilers don't get enough credit for their team defense sometimes. And I think that it gets overlooked. One other thing, going back to the Hurricanes and the Capitals, Frederik Andersen isn't getting enough credit. I think he has really stepped up his game in the playoffs. He's played very, very well. You talk about that suffocating style that Brindamore plays, but whenever the opposition does get a scoring chance, Frederik Andersen has been really, really good.
Yeah, he's been great, and I think our friends over at FanDuel understand that as well. If we look to wrap up here on the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'm just looking at tonight's games. We've got plus 120 for the Maple Leafs at home, and the Vegas Golden Knights are minus 130 rather on home ice here. And as of this morning, the Dallas Stars are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup at plus 260, the Oilers at plus 300, and the Hurricanes at plus 320. Those are your 3 leaders in odds. Gil, it's going to be a fantastic night of hockey. We look forward to having more discussions on it as things roll on. Wild to think we're not even halfway through the Stanley Cup playoffs. The second round is getting to a boiling point. Who can extend their series tonight? And will the Leafs be able to keep the trend going of home teams being victorious in their series against the Panthers? We'll be back next Wednesday, but for now, we hand it over to Thursday's edition of Locked On NHL and, of course, tonight's edition of Locked On NHL Game Night. Thank you for watching, listening, and engaging with the show. If you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up below. If you really enjoyed it, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Leave a 5-star review. We'll be back with more throughout the playoffs. For Gil Martin, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.